Mexico, aimlessly adrift, after signing up what we all thought would be a 3-hour tour. I gotta tell you, the show I did last night was my favorite one we've done so far. Hi, my name is Joe Bonamassa. I'm a guitar collector, an occasional musician, songwriter, personality. I'm as infamous as I am famous, and generally overall good guy, depending on the people you ask at the time of day. So originally this thing was titled the nitty-gritty, down and dirty, get to know Joe Bonamassa like you've never known him before. Let me give you a few things just so we can get it all straight. I haven't matured since age 10. My entire life has been nothing but guitars, guitar music, guitar magazines, collecting guitars, selling guitars, talking about guitars, talking about blues I like, talking about blues I don't like, for 35 years straight. Since my mother let me play the guitar after my kindergarten classes at age 4.5. So, let's just say I've never been arrested. There's never been any kind of scandal, any kind of this like gotcha behavior. My entire life is one gigantic fucking bore. So when they said, do we need to get into the nitty-gritty Joe Bonamassa, I see questions like, what's your favorite video game? I never played video games, okay? I never did. You know why? Because I was too busy playing the guitar, focusing on wanting to start a career in this hideous business called music. Anyway, so enough about me. I brought on two special guests today to kind of give you guys somewhat of an insight on, what we're doing here. And a gentleman named Scott Rosenbaum, who has made this wonderful documentary called Sidemen about, Pine Top Perky, Willie Big Eye Smith, and Hubert Sumner, one of our heroes. And, it's great. We showed it this morning. It's a wonderful film. It's a wonderful opportunity to get a glimpse into the true genius behind the geniuses that made that music, which were the Sidemen, who played on the records but never got the royalties, the credit, and the fame that Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and a lot of the band leaders got. And, it's easy to sit and watch the movie and go, wow, look at all this great music, listen to all this great music, look at these great, players, and what an enjoyable experience. But to understand what goes into making the movie, and especially the financial, burdens of making such a film, I thought it would be really interesting for you guys to hear why making a film of this nature is really tough, because I know, when you get into the directing business or filmmaking business, you go, okay, so we have a hot chick in a 1967 Yanko Camaro, okay? She's driving down Pacific Coast Highway, and we're gonna play Born to Be Wild from Steppenwolf. And then we're going to do a hard cut. Then there's a guy in a leather coat with a Colt 45 and a bottle of Jack Daniels, and we're going to play White Room from Cream, and then it's going to sync up. when they both meet at a bar in Santa Monica and we're gonna play Jimi Hendrix's Are You fucking kidding me? That thing's like $1 million worth of music in the first 3 minutes.
This is true. You could have been a screenwriter.
I'm out of here in 24 years. Okay, I'm retiring at 62. And you think 50 years is enough? You think enough is enough? Anyway, I'll call you in 24 years. I have a movie. Anyway, Scott, explain to these fine folks what goes into these kind of movies, behind the scenes, because you want to service the music correctly. You have to show that footage. You have to show that footage with the music, or else it's just basically a silent film with Charlie Chaplin. You can't hire a piano player to play Pine Top's parts on the side of each stage, and you can't do that, you know?
Right, well, unfortunately, my hot chick was Pine Top Perkins.
Right.
And, yeah, as you point out, there's plenty of made-for-TV documentaries where you can tell they didn't get the music rights to whatever artist they're covering, and they'll get a band to do some facsimile of that music, but it certainly leaves you lacking. And when you're talking about these 3 guys who are, as you pointed out, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Sidemen, had the impact on all the great rock and roll that I grew up loving, Zeppelin, The Doors, The Who, and so on. You need the music, and you need the imagery.
Well, some people get around that, they do what they call sound-alikes. And they hire people who are experts at making sound-alikes. But what happens when you make a documentary like you've made, if you hire people to do sound-alikes for this type of music, you get idiots like me watching it and yelling at the TV screen going, "Are you freaking kidding me?" So you have to do it right, or it's almost disagreeing. You have to do it right or don't do it.
Right, well, I mean, with those guys, I mean, in a word, if you're going to ask someone to describe or ask me why I'm attracted to that, and most people are attracted to the blues, it's authenticity. So if you're not going to put the music and you're not going to show the images, then, you know, it's just a hollow representation of what we're trying to talk about.
So tell them your efforts. So what are you doing? You played this thing, you know, at the premier film festival in the world called the Keeping the Blues Alive 3. Sundance be damned. This is the premier film festival in all of the Gulf of Mexico at the moment. So other than that, tell them where you played this in, and tell them how the reaction has been to this film that, to me, is extraordinarily important for that story to come out.
Well, we had the great good fortune to have the world premiere last March at South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, which, as many of you know, was the adopted home of Pine Top Perkins, so it couldn't have been more perfect. And it is one of the premier film festivals in the world, aside from this floating film festival here. Which, by the way, this is one of the most beautiful theaters, all kidding aside, that we've been able to...
If I was not been in many theaters, have you?
So,
this is his first theater experience, by the way.
Yeah, I won't get into some of the other screenings we've had in bars. But anyway, yeah, we started at South by Southwest. We had incredible music festival experiences, Bonnaroo, Glastonbury, New Toted, film festivals, Louisiana, Nashville. I mean, I can't even remember how many, 25 or so. And we've won half a dozen Best Documentary Awards. The reaction, I think...
Another round of applause for that. So now, how many years do you have in this invested? Your time personally, because you knew all these guys. You knew Pine Top, you knew Willie, you knew Hubert, and you knew that there was a, let's just say, a finite amount of time for you to get all these folks in a room together while they're still alive.
Yeah, I had met them in 2008, cast them in the first film that I had the good fortune to make, which was a narrative film called The Perfect Age of Rock and Roll. And I cast them as the blues band that was in the juke joint when Jason Ritter, Peter Fonda, and Kevin Zegers characters stumble into this juke joint. And I thought it would be funny, and for the 1% of the people that would see the film and know who these guys were, that you had the Muddy and Wolf guys up on stage. So spending the lunch break with those guys and talking firsthand about Muddy stories and Wolf stories, and telling about Robert Johnson dating his niece or his cousin or something like that. It was just too overwhelming to contemplate. You know, Robert Johnson's like this mythological figure, yet here's this guy that knew him firsthand.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, I want to do for these guys what The Last Waltz did for me, which was introduce me to Muddy Waters and the fact that there's this thing called the blues that goes well beyond the Rolling Stones. So in 2008, we set out to do that. And started to capture concerts and interviews, and the plan was to do a Last Waltz style concert film. And as many people who saw the film or know in general, in 2011, they all passed away within 8 months of each other, which caused me to have to rethink the whole thing.
Right. Well, you know, as a backstory, the first cruise that I ever did with the blues in the first name, and for a long time I thought I was the only one, was in 2006. And I remember being in the hallways of the corridor, and I was run over by a gentleman in one of those electronic kind of wheelchairs. And I turned around because, you know, I don't know if you've ever been run over by an electronic wheelchair. I hope you never have. I mean, this wasn't just a love tap. This was get out of the way. I am going to apologize. And I remember, you know, I had long hair. I was 60 pounds heavier and had chips on both shoulders at the time. And I was like, who the fuck is going to run me over like that? And I looked down, it was Pine Top Perkins. And I said to myself, you know, I can die a happy man saying that. I've never played with Pine Top Perkins, but I've been run over by him with a wheelchair. So now, you've done 8 years, you were telling me backstage, you put up almost $300,000 of your own money with some partners. And, you know, to do the music right, you needed like another 225 grand to license these songs from these very poor, struggling companies like Warner Chappell and Sony Music, and I'm sure Universal's involved, and people with private jets. To me, I think anybody above COO gets the private jet. I think if you're whatever, I don't know. Anyway, long story short, my opinion, not to bash them, but we're in the Gulf of Mexico and they can't defend themselves, and I'm sure nobody's filming this at all, is what good is holding on to the music if you're going to hold out for top dollar licensed retail, like you're licensing it to Colgate or Mr. Clean for a Super Bowl commercial? What good is owning the music if you're not going to get it out there for another generation to discover it? You're going to just lock it up in a vault somewhere in a mountain, and it's never going to be seen or heard again. So if I was on the private jet and I was COO of Warner Chappell, I'd be like, hey, you know what, Scott? I dig your passion, I dig your enthusiasm. Why don't you take the music, and if the film does good, you know, then we can talk and you can pay me back, because right now 0% of 0 is still 0, and at the end of the day, it's going to introduce this music that we can't sell anymore to a new generation of folks. Why doesn't that happen?
Well, it's hard to say, but I will say that some of the rights holders, particularly the clips, the archival footage, have been very generous and continuing to allow us to show this. The bigger music companies, I think the quotes that we have are for documentaries.
Right.
I mean, if you're CSI with looking for a Muddy Waters song, I'm sure it's going to be a lot more. So I think in their mind, these are the rates. And you have a lot of filmmakers making a lot of films, and if they did it for everyone, it'd probably be a nuisance, quite frankly. But, you know, when you get a film to this point, and I always knew if we got to make this film, it would be a great film, and after having shown it to so many people, I can say with confidence we have achieved that.
Right.
To get it over that tipping point, that's our struggle.
So here's where you stand as far as I'm concerned. I wrote all this down earlier in my own penmanship. So after being escorted out of Warner Chappell, Sony Music, and Universal by security, you have now come to the conclusion that your best option is to raise the money on Kickstarter.
Correct.
Now, I'm about to turn 40, so I don't know how to even sign up for it, but I'm sure you do. And it's basically a way to raise money from the people that you're going to sell the movie to, the fans.
Correct.
And if they want to see it, then they're going to want to see it, and they're going to have to, donate anything from $1 to $100 or whatever they feel comfortable donating. But I can tell you this for free, and I'm not just saying this because we're here, is this movie needs to be seen with the proper music. So if you have an extra dollar, if you decide to go to the casino and you win $5, give it to Scott, because at the end of the day, it's a way of preserving history. And you know me as a guitar collector, and I have way more guitars than I'll ever play in my life. And the way I justify all that is because I'm preserving history that'll never happen again. And my strongest subject in school was history because I just love what has happened before me and hopefully try to recreate it after I'm gone. So it's a great cause. It's a great film. Thank you again for screening it here on the world's most prominent floating film festival. And you got some very, very good features here on the film. As you can see, Bonnie Raitt, the late great Johnny Winter, Derek Trucks, Kenny Wayne Shepherd, one of my favorites, car collector by the way, Joe Perry, Shamika Copeland. I knew her father and I know her very well. She was on the boat last year. Greg Allman, who was going to be on the boat but had to postpone due to health reasons. We hope he's doing better. Big round of applause for Greg Allman. And Joe Bonamassa. Yeah, exactly. By the way, I got the plates. Yeah. I went to the state of California and I said, I got the plates. I want the plates. And so I'm standing in line at the DMV and I got my Bonahoo plates. And this guy comes up to me because you have to get the sticker. Because if you don't get the sticker, you get arrested, and they seize the car, they crush the car into the cube, and then you have 30 minutes to remove your cube, and you still get fined $275. Anyway, I'm standing in line. I got the Bonahoo plates. I stand in line at the DMV. What are you gonna do, right? And this guy comes and goes, "Here, come here." It's like, "Did you tell Joe about those Bonahoo plates?" So our second guest this afternoon is a very rare appearance. Not many times do you have the opportunity, because you come to our shows and you see on the marquees J&R Affiliates or J&R Adventures presents Joe Bonamassa at the Pabst Theater in Milwaukee or whatever. And, I'm the J, and today I've decided to bring the R. And that is Roy Weisman. And Roy and I have a very unique story that goes back 25 years. Now, if you ask a lot of artists and managers, about how long artists and managers' relations normally exist, 25 years is unheard of. It's almost like it's in the top 5%. And I met Roy in 1991 after I was on a television show called Real Life with Jane Pauley. It was right before Dateline NBC. And they came up to my house and they filmed me doing the same shit I do every day at almost age 40. Although we had a dog at the time. Had a room full of guitars, you know, posters and whatever. And this television show aired, and one of the first people to look us up in the phone book was Roy's father's company and Roy. And they flew up in a couple days later, and I got to meet Roy Weisman, who's 10 years older than me. So he was 23. He just turned 24. I was about to turn 14. And here we are. We find ourselves, literally 2 kids, like going, hey, let's try this thing. And we have been together now 26 years. Can you believe that?
Amazing 26 years. Fantastic.
And, you know, we've been very fortunate, thanks to you folks who have supported us through the years. I know it's funny to walk through the hallways of this boat and hear 17 solo albums of catalog, even going back to when I sounded like a moose singing in key, you know? And it's very, you know, it's very interesting to have this opportunity to speak to Roy and talk about, you know, the days before the guy in the suit. Because the guy in the suit, I'd always say that's the other guy. That guy comes out at 8 o'clock. By the way, I hope everybody was there last night at 8:30. I didn't see you. Where the fuck were you? I didn't get people to come to me on my own cruise. So, anyway, we started with a band called Bloodline. So tell the folks here about Bloodline and why, and please don't spare my feelings, because there was a real reason why a band like Bloodline, this was the sons of famous musicians band. I have this thing about sons of famous musicians, they tend to come our way. And this was the band with Barry Oakley Jr., Robbie Krieger's son Waylon, Miles Davis' son Aaron, and a guy named Lou Segretti on the keyboards. And there was a reason why we needed to kind of like, well, get him with a bunch of musicians that kind of could, let's say, fill in the gaps, let's say.
It was an interesting time. I just got in the music industry, and my company and my family, by the way, my father, Elliot Weisman, managed Frank Sinatra, so I was born into this business a little bit. I got into this business.
For 35 years.
Yeah. And so I decided I was going to follow in his footsteps, and we signed Joe Bonamassa, and so here I am. New Kids on the Block were very popular, and I was trying to, you know, get involved with some young talent. So we signed Joe, and I'm like, this is great. I grew up loving Eric Clapton, and Stevie Ray, and Jimmy Page, and Led Zeppelin. So this is the kind of music that I can relate to, and at this time, rap and pop music is totally in a different place. Rock is dying, and you know, I thought I had something great. I could take it to the labels, and it would be an automatic. I have a child prodigy guitar player, and we're going to try to do something great.
And only a child guitar player. Like, there was no other.
But I didn't understand what that really meant at the time. So, lo and behold, I go to the labels, and I shop Joe around, and there was oddly no automatic interest, and I was like, what's going on here? I mean, this is great talent. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, don't you develop talent? And they're like, yeah, but that was the 70s, you know. We don't do that anymore. This is now the 90s. We have home demo machines. People have discovered how to write and make their own music, and it's a different time. They were looking for artists to be almost making hit records, walking into the record company. There wasn't such thing as development.
And thus, not to interrupt you, Roy, at 24 years old, experiencing the first blank stares from the music industry, the same blank stares that he would get for the next 17 to 20 years.
It's still to this day.
It's still to this day.
Which ballrooms. Anyway, it was an interesting time, and so it became apparent to me very quickly that it wasn't going to happen just with Joe by himself, and that we had to package him and showcase his talents with other musicians. So what was interesting is Joe was the youngest in the history of Fender Guitar Corporation to get an endorsement. So after that TV program, they endorsed him, and then not too long after, Leo Fender passed away, and Joe was invited to the Leo Fender tribute out in Irvine, California, where there was tons of famous musicians, guitar players, so forth, tributing him. And the Robbie Krieger band was performing that night, and in that band was Barry Oakley Jr., and his father was Barry Oakley from the Allman Brothers, so he's sitting in with Robbie Krieger's band, and he's a great bass player. And
we were honored to have J&R here on the boat, by the way.
Yeah, awesome. And so we're looking for musicians, and Joe spotted Barry, and he said, that's a really cool bass player, and I think that's somebody that we should talk to and see if he's interested. And lo and behold, his best friend was Waylon Krieger, and that's how we met Waylon. And then we got to Miles Davis' son at the time. Miles had just passed away. We had to wait a few weeks and get to, after the family situation, and we reached out to him. And we had a rehearsal in California, and that was the beginning of trying to find a band around Joe that would be great. And this whole bloodline thing kind of happened by accident because Joe saw Barry Oakley at the Fender Tribute.
Yeah, and the idea was these were kids that filled in the gaps. All I was really interested in is playing the guitar, eating my way through the 50 states because it was just a Stuckey's was like international cuisine at the time. Like, wow, I got fried chicken at 2 a.m. Man, I'm in luck. But I wasn't a front man. I still am I'm still that awkward kid that if you see me waddling around the ship, not until the time when I hit the stage does the other side of the personality come out, and that's the showman part of it. And so for many years, we could skip over it. Everybody knows my history with B.B. King and the legends that have helped us over the time. But after they kicked me out of Bloodline because I was an 18-year-old, up my own ass, spoiled brat who didn't really know anything about how lucky he had it, how hard it was to get to where we were even at that point in time, and I just wanted to stick to this very stringent definition of the blues and the thing that I wanted to do. They kicked me out, and so I find myself on a boat, and I find myself on a boat in the middle of an ocean, not unlike right now, and without really a path. I didn't sing, and I didn't write songs. I wrote riffs, but I didn't know how to put songs together, and all of a sudden I had to start. I literally found myself in a career position at 18 or 19 years old where I had to start over. And I had to learn how to sing, and I had a little 4-track recorder, and I said, well, I'm going to just sing and just sing, and I sent Roy a demo tape, which I believe he still has, which will never be released.
That was a great moment too, because the band had just broken up. Joe had missed high school, and he had, he was on tutors for half this year, and working and touring. The rest of the year he'd be back at school, so he missed a lot of that. And the band broke up, and I was, I felt really bad for the whole situation. He missed his high school normal career, and here he is 18. And I said to Joe, listen, I'm with you, whatever you want to do. You want to do jazz, you want to do blues, you want to do fusion. It's not about the money. And, I love your playing, and I want to be in the music business. I want to be in the music business with you. So let's do something. And, take your time, and when you're ready, you'll call me. And I didn't know if it was going to be a year or 6 months or what have you. And literally 2 or 3 weeks later, unbeknownst to me, I had a package in my office, and I open it up, and there's a cassette, and it's at the time you could make a demo on a cassette player. And I put it in and there was a note, and it said, this is me trying to sing Joe with a happy face. And I put the cassette in my cassette player. And I remember it, and it was odd because most of it was really not very good.
It was terrible.
But there was a vocal moment here and there, and that's the honest truth. And what goes with that is a conversation that was had 3 years prior that we had a vocal coach come in with Bloodline and try to teach them how to sing vocal harmonies along with Barry, which Waylon and Joe had no interest in singing at all at that time. But the vocal coach coming out of the consultation had told me that the person that has the most vocal range would be Joe Bonamassa, and at that time the only thing that you were doing was eating McDonald's and not singing. So I was surprised to hear that.
That would be like the same as telling Roy, like the guy in the band that was most likely to be a supermodel and a Formula One driver was the fat kid in the corner,
But I got to tell you, I remember that, and it was stark because I said, wow, bottle that vocal sound, and if you could sing from beginning to end that beautifully, then there's something here. So immediately I responded, and we went to work.
And we went to work, and we were lucky enough at the time, we went through a few delineations of some label interest, and not to get into the macro of it, a guy named Michael Kaplan saw a little diamond in the rough with us and signed us to a deal with Epic Records. And this was when I was about 20. And when Michael signed us, he goes, have you ever heard of Tom Dowd? And I said, of course I've heard of Tom Dowd. And he's like, well, I want to put you in the room with Tom Dowd. I said, well, you tell me which room to show up in and I will be there. And Tom flew up from Florida and he came in to see a club show at the Dinosaur Barbecue in Syracuse, New York. Which, thank you, sir. You've been to the Dinosaur Barbecue and you're still alive. Thank you very much. Anyway, Tom gets off the plane, and Tom has to be 74 years old at the time. He gets off the plane, he looks around, and he looks at me, and he goes, you know, son, I have not been in this general location in the world for 60 years. And I'm 20, and I'm going, what is this guy about? And he comes and he produces some demos, and we make a record for Epic Records. And this was in a time, this was in 1999 we made the record, and the record came out in 2000. And this is a time when the record companies were flush with cash, so they could take on the hard luck cases, the vanity projects like Joe Bonamassa plays the British blues, and we did the record was called A New Day Yesterday. Some of you may have heard of it, maybe not. I think all 250 people that bought the album are in this room right now. Thank you very much. And we went on tour with Jethro Tull, and the irony of all ironies, and about 3 weeks later we get a call from Epic Records and the party was over and we were dropped. We were just, it didn't sell. I wouldn't be the first person to be dropped by a record company. I certainly won't be the last person to be dropped by a record company. I may be dropped by my own record company after this interview, we have no idea. No guarantees. Anyway, so Roy and I find ourselves once again, after we were pretty much for the past 3 years to get something going, find ourselves once again at square one. And square two was this record called So It's Like That. And we did this record on a label called Medalist, which you ran. So tell us about your time at Medalist Records. It was a compilation label.
Yeah, I was, at that time in my life, I had 2 jobs. I had my Joe Bonamassa management job, which wasn't making much income for the family at that time.
What's 10%, 20% of zero?
Zero.
Thank you.
And my wife reminded me of that, trust me. And so simultaneously I had another job along the way. For actually 17 years I didn't make an income from the Joe Bonamassa and project and all of what we've been doing. But and I had other jobs, and I was running a compilation record company doing TV records on TV and selling them. It was right around the time that Napster came into the world too, and kind of destroyed the whole music business. Like in a solid year, like things changed dramatically. And but I was able to put out Joe's second record on this label, and we were able to keep the dream alive. And it really was that. And it was just, you know, in the history of all that happened, if you think about that time, if I didn't have that opportunity, we don't know where fate would have taken this. But it was a good time because we got to make a record for ourselves. It's the beginning of that opportunity, and that record, I think, showed us a lot too about what we didn't want to be, or what we wanted to be.
And following that, we took what was left of our $12,000. I think collectively we stuck in 12 grand or something like that. And I was living in New York City at the time, and my band was in New York City, and you know, my budget was $20 a day, and I had this thing down. Reduced fat Jif peanut butter, strawberry preserves, bread that was, let's just say, on the verge of freshness. And I would buy these cases of ramen noodles. $1 a soup. Come on now, it's cheaper than the boat. Anyway, and that's how I would subsist on this like, I don't know, platter of goodness, which I still love to this day. I'm still a sucker for ramen noodles and chicken, peanut butter and jelly. Thank you. Anyway, we made this record for about $12,000, and it was 3 originals, and it was 9 covers, and it was an album called Blues Deluxe. And now you're starting to remember. And it was the first foray into, we called the label Premier Records. And it came out initially on Premier Records, and then Roy and I decided in 2004, we were like, we need to rename the record company. We always talked about what we've been through up until this point as an adventure, because nothing's been easy. Everything has been kind of a fight and a struggle, and certainly the traditional music, media, and business has not, let's just say, been supportive. And so everything's been an adventure. So we called it J&R Adventures, and we started to make records under this J&R Adventures label. And in 2005, Roy was like, okay, we need to kind of up our game. We need to find a producer, kind of like Tom Dowd, that could challenge you, Joe, so you don't feel like you're self-producing the records, but give us a different sound that kind of widens our audience. And we meet a guy through a friend of yours named Kevin Sherb.
I think it's important to know one of the magic things about Joe and J&R is, at this time, I mean, working with the labels, any artist coming from a label experience will most likely tell you it's pretty much horrible. A label traditionally gets involved in your creative life. They think they know better than the artist, and they try to tell the artist on how to make their music, and it's an odd experience for most artists. And so when we were signed to Sony, of course, we did have that experience as well, but Michael Kaplan was great. Joe made a great record with Tom Dowd. But this is the folklore of the industry, and I knew with Joe Bonamassa that, knowing him as well as I knew him, that the key to his success was to allow him to be an artist without any influence from anyone. And at the end, because in this experience, it was not going to be driven by money or radio airwaves, because in our little independent world, we weren't going to get any airplay. So I didn't try to aspire to have Joe make music in any way. And that gave him the freedom to have no one tell him how to make his music, and consequently his records are, by some people's definition, eclectic. But what they are is they're totally him and Kevin, and they make the records for themselves, and at the end, hopefully everyone loves them. And I think that's the greatest thing that J&R was able to offer him, is a freedom to make his records. And that became the mantra for all of what's happened over the last 17 years since we took over the recording.
And yeah, and one of the things about our relationship with Kevin and my relationship with Roy and Kevin is everybody sticks to their own lanes. I'm the traveling salesman. I take the salesman sample out on the road, we set it up every day, and go, look, you like this little blues rock model, okay? And then Roy manages the business side of it, and Kevin does the records. And very little cross-pollination goes in between the three, and that's why we're still friends after all this time.
I don't need to go to the recording sessions. And a lot of managers, like in the movies, they want to be like, I'm like part of the scene here. I take care of the business. They make the records. There's no place for me there, and I don't try to be there. I'll let you do their thing.
So not that this was an omen or maybe a bad sign, so on June 6th of 2006, 666, 06, we release a record called You and Me. And it was the first time I worked with Jason Baum, and a year and a half later we released a record called Slow Gin. And in the middle of the Slow Gin process, I started to lose some weight. And because Kevin called me one day, I was so proud. We had sold 500 tickets at the House of Blues in Cleveland, Ohio, and I decided to get dressed up. Thank you very much. Love you, Cleveland. Been there since day one. And I decided to get into my same jeans, but a dress shirt, and I still had long hair and these crappy little $10 sunglasses. And I thought I looked good. Let me tell you something. I was like, that would look good. And I get a call from Kevin the next day. He goes, I saw your photos from Cleveland. He goes, man, you look like a slob. And I'm like, oh, thanks. He goes, you gotta buy a suit or do something, man. God, you look like a slob. So I go to Sears, and there were 2-for-1 Sears activewear suits. At the time, I was a size 38 regular, and I pick up a couple of Sears activewears, you know, slightly charred in the, you know, last year's bin. And long story short, I started dressing up in this suit, and as I kind of lost some more weight and a little bit of heartbreak put it, you know, mixed in there, I got down to what you see now, which is 178 pounds of, well, the same geek you've always known. Anyway, so at the end of the day, we also made a record in that time of the transition called The Ballad of John Henry, which was really the big one. And we started to get some success in the UK, and so much so that people thought I was English. And we ended up, with the help of Mark Knopfler's manager and our people over there, procuring the most desired night in the world, which is a Monday night at the Royal Albert Hall, May 4th, 2009. And we had this show, we didn't know what we were going to do with it. We decided to put the big band together. We had Anton Fig, who you saw last night. We had Lee Thornburg, who you saw last night. We had his double drums, and I invited Eric Clapton. He was nice enough to come. Everybody knows that story. And we filmed it, and what not a lot of people know about that day was, for J&R Adventures, that was the beginning of the beginning, or it was the beginning of the end. So tell the folks a little bit about behind the scenes, what it's like, because right now, if I look at that film, I'm looking like I had a great fucking time. That day, it was as pressure-packed as you could get. So just give them your perspective. They all know my perspective, but give them your perspective of that day, May 4th, 2009, and really the day that changed our entire trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, what was that, 17 years into our business. Clearly, it was a defining moment for all of us, and financially, we had it all, you know, all on the line. We had producers, cameras, you know, all kinds of expenses. We had one take at this thing, and if you're sitting there with all this production and you have one take to get it right, and you don't know if you're going to get it right, and your whole business is riding on that line. I mean, I'm sitting here imagining, well, what if it doesn't sound good? Or what if the cameras don't work? You know, all these kinds of crazy things. What if Joe gets sick? I mean, you can't imagine the amount of fear we have in just thinking about all these things. So it was a lot of tension, and it was also this idea of Eric Clapton showing up that day. And
very punctual man, by the way. He said he was going to be there at 4:30. He wasn't there at 4:31 or 4:29. The guy shows up at 4:30.
Yeah.
That says something. I'm a punctual guy.
And he drove himself there.
We were early today, by the way. Yeah, he drove himself.
It was a great experience, and the night was magical. And I think, you know, when you look back on it, it defines definitely a turning point in our career, and set the stage for excellence that we could achieve and that was possible. And I think you've seen by virtue of the kind of things that we've done over the last 8 years since that we continue to strive to make, you know, great music, great places, and, you know, there's a vision. There's been a vision for 25 years. Joe has a vision, I have a vision, and, you know, we work really hard. I mean, there's a lot of focus and vision that goes into getting to where we are today, and with a plan for tomorrow. And that was definitely the springboard into what we've had the opportunity to create thus far.
And, you know, the idea of it is, it's not all gold, but the intentions are gold. Like, we know that, you know, we release a record, and by our own admission, we release a record or a project every other weekend, okay? And we appreciate you guys buying them, by the way. And the idea is when we enter into these things, we want to, it's to expand our horizons musically, but if you have to talk about our collaborations, you know, Black Country Communion, we did those records, just did another one, by the way. And I reached out to Glenn, Jason, and Derek, and I said, hey, listen, you know, I was an idiot, you're an idiot, you're an idiot, you're an idiot, that guy was an idiot, and we're all a bunch of fucking assholes, so why don't we just, you know, call it a day. And, 30 kids, sorry.
What's the release date?
I don't know, sometime between now and never, I have no idea.
September.
Honestly, September. And
Ask me.
I'm very proud of that collaboration. I'm very proud of the records I make with a band called Rock Candy Funk Party. That's where I'm very proud of the records I make with Beth Hart, who's on the boat. And you know, and I'm very proud of the records I make by myself. And it all feels like at the end of the day that this discussion is like, we're all in it together, and you guys have put me in this chair, and I don't talk much live because I'm not one of those kind of guys that sit there and, you know, this is a song about a girl who broke my heart, or this is a song about the first time I went to see the Acropolis in Athens, and, you know, I tripped and fell, and it's called Bloody Sunday Monday, you know, whatever it is. You know, I lost my kneecap in Athens, or whatever, I don't know what the hell the song's called anymore. And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm truly grateful for your support. Day in and day out, I wake up every morning the luckiest musician in the world because you guys support us no matter what we do, because traditional logic says that a solo artist should only be this aloof type of character that drops an album. We don't release albums, we drop albums in 2017. Drop an album in 2017, only do the right press, be real aloof, be real like, you know, this mystery. Me, I'd rather sit here and know your story and everybody's story because you guys invested yourselves in myself and Roy. But you know, it's important to know that I appreciate it, and you guys are the best fans anybody could have ever asked for. So to wrap up, yeah, and you know, my mom and dad are here, so they're depending on the day, they're kind of proud of what we're doing. So to wrap up, Scott, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Support the movie Sidemen, you know. And Roy, thank you. I know this was the last minute entry. I said, you know, like, how do you try to make these discussions interesting? It's not, you know, a lot of people don't realize that you know, I get all the credit. You know, it's like, you know, it's this and that, and it's my name on the truck, and it's my stupid face on the truck, and it's my stupid face on the bobblehead, and the frisbees, and the beach towels, and you know, but I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that guy. Any artist who says that they can do it all themselves is lying to themselves. And it really takes a team. And speaking of team, I can hear Beth Hart's team behind me starting to move cases, which is pretty much our cue for a discretionary exit. Thank you very much. Is there anybody who wants to shout out a question for anybody but me before we leave? Yes, you shout it out.
What really happened with the bus in Atlanta when you played at the Fox?
Okay, thank you very much.
Actually, I should start that story.
Yeah, Roy was there.
First of all, if you know anything about me, I don't answer my phone. So we'll start there. So it's hard to get me. And on this particular morning, for whatever reason, at 9 a.m., my cell phone rings in Atlanta, and I happen to answer it. And it's got a Nashville number on it, for whatever reason. And it's some guy who's saying, "Are you Joe Bonamassa's manager?" I'm like, "Yeah, who's this?" And they're like, "Well, we're here to repossess your bus."
So now, just so you know, the first thing, you you see all those tour buses that are parked upside the venue. We don't own those. That's one thing you do not want to own because it will bleed you to death, you know? And it's just one repair bill after the next. And so we lease them from a bus company. We pay the bus company to pay their mortgage on the bus. The problem is when the bus company doesn't pay their mortgage on the bus and they come for Joe Beach. So now, we played Augusta, Georgia 2 nights before, and they had been following this particular coach, which happened to be my personal bus, thank you very much. And I was so tired after the Augusta show that I actually decided to sleep on the bus in front of the hotel. So if this guy decided to take the bus 2 days before, not only would he have repossessed 359 Les Pauls, he would have repossessed me. Which then, for real, if we've always complained we never got any mainstream media attention, I would have been on CNN, Fox, and NBC, okay? Because you would have heard about crazy guy steals bus out of repo yard. Because 20 years on a tour bus, you don't think I know how to start that fucking thing? I would have drove it through the fence. So anyway, long story short, we're with a new bus company, and when the news was broken to me, because Roy and my tour manager and the people, they stripped all the stuff that I bought on the road, like my Vox sign, which I love, and everything, stuff I find. What I didn't realize, I was sitting at lunch at the time, and I was just having my salad before the show, or before we went over to sound check, and Clay, my tour manager, goes, "Hey, the bus has been repossessed." You ever have that moment going, that doesn't sound too bad. And then you start realizing, going, oh, if they repossess the contents, I'm going to have a heck of a time getting my own personal effects back because I have to prove that they're mine and blah, blah, blah. So it was a strange, surreal day that went throughout the entire bus community. I think we are one of the few people to ever have a bus repossessed mid-tour while not owning the bus, hence the name J&R Adventures, because every day is truly an adventure. One more question before we leave.
Can you show the Sidemen again?
I'm sorry?
Can you show the Sidemen again on this cruise?
Yeah, tomorrow when the boat pulls into port, they're showing it at 12:30. We're supposed to be here, but there needs to be some work done, so I think they moved it to the Spinnaker Lounge, and I think it's 12:30. I'm sure they'll make an announcement or post it, but it is being screened again tomorrow.
Yeah, you gotta come see it if you haven't seen it. Anybody else? Who's got one? In the back.
Is there going to be a DVD from Carnegie Hall?
DVD for Carnegie Hall, that's coming out this year. Yeah. Yes, in the back.
I wanted to know what we can do as fans to get Scott's guys into the Rock Hall of Fame.
Well, I mean, we made the film to raise awareness to the fact that Hubert deserves to be there. We made these t-shirts and put them on Kickstarter and hopefully raise the money to pay for the music, to release the movie. So, all that.
Can we bombard them with
I'm sorry?
requests? Can we bombard them with requests?
I don't think that really works because I think what they do is they block you on email.
Yeah.
And then they report to you some kind of authority figures and then, yeah. I've never heard of that really working.
No, they have there's a document that his manager circulated here while he was still alive. Everyone from Clapton to the Santana and everybody, Levon, all 25 names saying put Hubert in the Hall of Fame, and it still hasn't happened. So
They know who needs to go in. They know who needs to go in, and at the end of the day, eventually that'll happen. Anybody else? Anybody else want to shout one out? In the white in the back, shout it out.
Yes!
You're not in white.
Are you going to get a killer sponsor and move to the stadium tours?
First of all, I can get Coca-Cola. I can get Pepsi. I can get Diet Right Cola. I can get Budweiser, Gillette. I can get, let's say, Ford and Mercedes Mercedes and Bentley and Ferrari and every major sponsorship in the entire world, I still couldn't fill the restroom at a stadium. So I'm going to pass on that, you know.
It's okay, stay small.
Nobody wants to see it. Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I like playing in the theater. I'll tell you why, because I get to see you all. I've done my fair share of arenas. I've done my fair share of arenas, and honestly, it looks like I look at like 3 people, and it feels like we're playing to ourselves in a big reverb tank. So I like playing the theater. So that's just my opinion. Now you can go in the back. Go ahead.
Mr. Weisman,
Oh.
you. Can we have a Bonamassa visa, something, so we can chart your everything? And,
Oh, that's music to my ears.
And possibly go to your foundation.
Well, we have the foundation. We have the Keeping the Blues Alive Foundation that we do every year. This cruise is pretty much based around. And the idea is we give away musical instruments, music, anything, and it's not just blues oriented, because you can't just like narrow it down to it's got to go to somebody who's going to play the blues, because I don't just play the blues.
It's actually interesting, and I'd like to make a point about that. So we started the foundation, this will be our 4th year, and Joe and I started it because we felt, since we have this leadership position now, that we should do something and use our position to raise money for music, and this is our effort. And we thank everyone here for supporting Keeping the Blues Alive. And what's interesting about it is when we started the foundation, one of the things that I thought about was transparency and the idea that what our goal is, and if you go to the website and you check it out, we every time we give out money, which we give out money every week to schools across America, our goal is to give out 100% of the money that we bring in. And what I want to do is have the money distributed to a lot of different schools. So we give out about $500 to sometimes $1,000 per school. There's several online websites that offer schools a place to put up their fundraising initiatives, and we go and we find them and we pick them and we work with them. And so that's the goal of Keeping the Blues Alive, is to take the money from all of you and your support and our work and keep putting music into schools, because right now the funds for schools have been cut. And if you speak to the music teachers, they actually, believe it or not, don't have enough money for basic things that you would think, from flutes to, you know, and so we thank you.
Weisman, we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us in the Stardust Theater. Please watch your step as you exit the venue.